We love to throw around the words reason and rationality. We like to tell people, you're being unreasonable, or you're being irrational. And usually what we mean when we say these things is that the person is acting emotionally as opposed to acting logically. But what if we're all acting out of emotion and some of us are just better at controlling it than others? When we say reason, what are we even talking about? Where does reason come from? Philosophers have been thinking about this question for ages, and today we are going to be talking about Immanuel Kant and David Hume and understanding what they believed to be the true meaning and purpose of reason. But first, I'd like to pose you with a thought experiment. Let's suppose that you're a college student, because you very well might be. It's Thursday night and you have a philosophy paper due tomorrow. It's finals week, it's an incredibly important paper, and you've hardly worked on it, so you gotta get cranking on it tonight. But your friends invite you out to a party. And last Thursday you embarrassed yourself. You need to redeem yourself tonight. You have such a strong urge to go out, but you know that you should stay home. So on the one hand, your desires are telling you to go out and party, have a good time. And on the other hand, something is telling you, you have to stay home and finish this paper. You know that staying home is the right thing to do. Maybe it's the reasonable thing to do. But here's the real question. Is it really reason that makes you stay home? Or do you really just have a stronger desire to stay home? Well, Immanuel Kant and David Hume had radically different answers to this question. Kant believed that pure reason alone dictated morality, whereas Hume believed that reason is just a made-up term for the mechanism by which we serve our desires and our passions. So first, let's take a deeper look at Immanuel Kant's view. Kant was a moral rationalist who believed that morality isn't about what we want, it's about what we should do or what we ought to do. For Kant, emotions and desires are just distractions in the way of achieving pure practical reason. The only way to make true, morally upright decisions is to shun our emotions, shun our desires, and simply focus on what is purely reasonable. He writes, quote, "Act only according to that maxim whereby you can, at the same time, will that it should become a universal law." End quote. This is Kant's categorical imperative. It's kind of like the golden rule, which you've probably heard of before, the idea that you should do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But this is even grander than that. This is, you should only ever do that which you would want others to only ever do. Let's say you're feeling inclined to tell a white lie. It's not going to hurt anyone and it's only going to benefit you in the moment. Should you do it? Well, Kant would say no, because if you justify lying right now for yourself, you are justifying lying in all circumstances for all humans everywhere, always. And if everybody was lying all the time, then trust would collapse, society would crumble, it would not be good. So, moral actions for Kant must be based on objective reason as opposed to personal inclinations. For Kant, morality is a battle between reason and desire. You can think of reason as the little angel sitting on one shoulder telling you all the morally righteous things that you should do. And your desires and your passions are the devil sitting on your other shoulder telling you the things that you want to do. They're both pulling you in different directions, but your reason is the correct one. So in the case of our thought experiment from earlier, Kant would probably say that your desires are telling you to go out and party because you know it's going to feel good, you're going to have a lot of fun, but reason is telling you you should stay home, work on that paper because that's the right thing to do. That's the reasonable, logical thing to do. Now we shift our focus over to David Hume. In his treatise on human nature, David Hume completely flipped Kant's idea on its head. He argued that reason doesn't control our decision-making at all. Instead, reason is just a tool that serves our desires. He writes, quote, "Reason is and ought only to be the slave of the passions." End quote. So, what does he mean by this? Well, unlike in Kant's view, where we have reason versus desire, Hume sees it as being desire versus other desire. Neither one of them is morally superior on their own, but one of them is inevitably going to be stronger than the other. You're going to have a weaker desire and a stronger desire. And that's where reason comes in. We use reason to figure out which desire is stronger and why. Reason is simply the mechanism by which we achieve the end goal of whatever our passions and desires want. I like to think of the fact that we're often reasoning through something, right? Reason is not the driving force, it's the mechanism or the thought process that we use to turn our emotions into actions. We don't act because reason tells us to, we act because we feel like it, and then reason figures out how to make it happen. So in the case of our thought experiment, Hume would say that, yes, you have a desire to go out and party and have a good time, but you also have a desire to write your paper. And it's not because you desire to write the paper, it's because you desire to get a good grade in the class so that you can pass the class, so that you can graduate, so that you can get a good job, so that you can live a good life and ultimately be happy. But you only figure all that out through the mechanism of reasoning. There was no ultimate force telling you one decision was the correct choice over the other. You just used your reason to try and figure out what's the best possible outcome for me in this circumstance. Both of these theories are entirely probable, but only one of them can be right. So, who is it? On the one hand, we have Kant, who sees reason as an independent force making decisions based on universal laws. And on the other hand, we have Hume, who sees reason as like a calculator or a personal assistant who's guiding you through, helping you make the right decisions, parsing between your different desires. But there is one problem with Hume's view. If he's right, does that mean that morality is entirely subjective? If morality is entirely based on feelings and emotions, what happens when people's emotions contradict each other? One person might feel disgust at someone stealing something, and another person might see it as morally justifiable. So who's right? Without reason as a universal guide, morality seems to be just a matter of opinion and circumstance. But let's pick on Kant for a second. If he's right, why do people so often act irrationally and go against their reason? If pure reason is in control of morality, why do people still lie? Why do they cheat? Why do they steal if it's not for their ultimate benefit? Why are they making emotional decisions that go against moral conclusions? Let's go back to Kant's universal moral law. He believes that there is an objective standard of morality that all humans must live by in order to be moral agents. But in order to abide by this moral law, we must use reason. We must have reason within us. But where do we acquire this reason? It seems to come about in our lives at some point or another, but we definitely don't have it from birth because children are completely irrational and completely unreasonable. Until children are of a certain age, they usually act purely on instinct, purely on emotion. They will lie, they will cheat, they will steal, and they won't necessarily see anything wrong with it. They don't know instinctually that their actions have consequences down the line. So is this to say that children do not have reason, or that their reason faculty is not fully developed yet? And if that's the case, when does it develop? If reason is something that develops over time, then it's really just your acquisition of knowledge and understanding that actions have consequences and that you should act in a way that serves you better, that serves your interests better, ultimately, right? If that's the case, reason is not really this innate faculty that we have that counters our desires, this understanding of the universal moral law. We're really just figuring out how to navigate life better. My other problem with Kant's view is, what is the driving force behind reason if there is no desire behind it? And the reason I ask this is because Kant does not believe that morality is divinely commanded by God, right? Because usually in this circumstance, when we have objective morality versus subjective morality, the person taking the objective morality approach is usually saying that it's commanded by God, right? It's ordained by God, and God is the ultimate supreme being, and whatever he says goes. Kant doesn't believe, not that he doesn't believe in God, I do believe Kant does believe in God, but he is not saying that morality is divinely commanded. He's saying that morality exists completely on its own, as its own universal principle. But the thing that confuses me about this is, why would humans instinctually serve this arbitrary universal principle? Especially if it doesn't benefit them in some sense. Because in the sentimentalist viewpoint, you're acting on a desire that is going to serve you right now. And in the religious sense, when you're abiding by objective moral standards, you are doing something that maybe doesn't serve you right now, but ultimately it will serve you in the future because God sees everything that you do. So when it comes to Kant's theory of this arbitrary, universal moral law, for what purpose are we humans serving this moral law? It doesn't make any sense. Now, Hume's view comes with a couple of problems itself, but the main problem with it is essentially, if there's nothing keeping our desires in check, if there's no reason lording over our passions, then what's stopping them from running amok and constantly keeping us in this state of flux where we don't actually know what we want, we can't decide, and there's no real way to tell right from wrong? But honestly, I think that Hume would probably agree that some people do suffer with this problem. Some people have real decision paralysis. They have total anxiety about trying to do the right thing or do the morally correct thing. These are exactly the people that you would deem unreasonable or irrational because they allow their emotions to control them rather than controlling their emotions. Hume does say that reason is the slave to the passions. So obviously our passions rule over us. But this leaves us with the same question. If Hume is correct, why is it that some people seemingly are better at controlling their emotions and making reasonable decisions, as opposed to other people who make decisions seemingly completely based on emotion, devoid of logic? So what do you guys think? Personally, for myself, if I had to give an opinion, I do think that Hume's view is closer to the truth and that we're ultimately just choosing between desires, one's stronger, one's weaker, and we use reason to get to the end of them. However, I do think that there is something within us that allows us to be better at controlling our emotions, but I don't think it's reason. What I really think it is experience with problem solving. So I want to turn the question over to you guys. Given everything that you've learned in this video, who do you think is correct? Do you think Hume, with his sentimentalist viewpoint, is correct, that we're all just making emotional decisions all the time and some people are just better at controlling their emotions than others? Or do you agree with Kant? Do you believe that there is an objective moral standard and that we must use reason to be moral agents? I would really love to hear your guys' opinions in the comments. And if you liked this video, please share it with someone and give it a like and consider subscribing because I have cats to feed. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.